Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Phil at the Movies. Now, there are teen films, teen comedies, if you will, and then there are films. 10 Things I Hate About You is most certainly the latter. Smart, funny, charming, and all around sweet. This comedy borrows heavily from Taming of the Shrew. In fact, it's a perfect modern adaptation of the Shakespeare classic, with enough sensibilities to fit perfectly with the turn of the century pop culture and vibes of that era, complete with a stellar cast that includes Julia Stiles, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and of course the late, great, and forever missed Heath Ledger. This teen comedy is above its peers, in my humble opinion, and delivers a movie that is not only sharply written, but beautifully acted and frankly holds up now 25 years later, which is crazy to think about. Everybody just hold that thought for a minute. 1999, this is another celebrated film from that year that turns 25. So raise a goblet for that right now. But in any event, that is going to be the topic of today's episode, 10 Things I Hate About You. And I am delighted, not that I hate this person, but I am delighted to welcome back Mr. J.J. Hodges. This is now his second time on the show. So JJ, welcome back to the show. And I'm looking forward to talking about this film with you today. And I want to point out that you were the one who brought it to my attention that this movie does turn 25 years old. I think we've passed its milestone. I think it was back in March of 99 when it was released. So we're a few months after the fact, but nevertheless, no time like the present. So JJ, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this is one of my favorite movies. And I kind of threw it out there to you, like, hey, if you're thinking about it, it's no big deal. And I kind of don't know why I downplayed it, because literally there's nobody I talk to about this movie that goes, yeah, not a fan. It's either I love that movie or I haven't seen it. You know what I mean? Right. And there's very few of the latter.
No, I will just say at the start, I was late to the party with this film. Like I had seen bits and pieces of it over the years, and obviously knew about it, but it wasn't until I honestly want to say it was like probably within the last maybe 5 or 6 years that I actually sat down and saw it from start to finish. And it was one of those movies going into you sort of think, okay, is this going to live up to the hype that everybody has talked about? Because certainly many films have come out in this sort of genre or subgenre since then, but I was happy to say that it not only met expectations, but it outright surpassed and delivered on all accounts. It's a marvelous film, absolutely marvelous film.
It really is, and I think it having kind of that Shakespearean, I guess for lack of a better word, text to have as its blueprint really helps with that.
That's the thing. Like it's funny, sort of was discussing this with somebody a few weeks back with Anyone But You, which sort of, again, another I really wouldn't call that a teen comedy, more of a traditional rom-com. Sidebar, everybody starring Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, but that also borrows heavily from a number of Shakespeare plays and whatnot. But this is sort of one of those interesting takes where it never feels forced, if I can say that. Like, again, I enjoyed Anyone But You, and that's just one example. But a lot of times these films that will borrow heavily from Shakespeare or sort of adapt for a modern audience feel a little too heavy-handed. This never feels like it's sort of like taking that play, if you will, and setting it in the modern era. Like it's borrowing moments, but it's not like an in your face. It doesn't beat you over the head with, okay, this is Shakespeare, but we're setting it in 1999.
Right.
Yeah, it's go ahead.
I think there was an Ethan Hawke version of Hamlet that was like modern day New York, but it was they spoke the script of Hamlet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a little much,
I don't like that. Yeah.
I like to say, if you're going to borrow from Shakespeare, like either do it as it were, or again do like with what this film did, which was sort of almost making I don't want to say it's an homage, but it definitely is more of in the spirit of Taming of the Shrew rather than setting it in 1999 and just changing the vernacular a little bit. But I mean, let's dive into it. So this movie again, it sort of it takes the premise of the play, but like I said, does it with sort of the modern sensibilities. Basic premise of it is you have this overprotective father of two girls, and he doesn't allow either of them to date. And introduce the character of Cameron, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who is kind of it's sidebar everybody, but it's sort of funny that you had two future Dark Knight fish not alumni, if you will, in this film. Kind of interesting to think about what was to come. But no,
Mhm.
yeah. So he's in love with Bianca, and he's trying to get her to go on a date with him. But like I said, the father has a very strict no dating policy. So he's the one catch is if the older daughter can find a date, then of course Bianca can date, and that's where all of the shenanigans fall into play, where we are introduced to I guess you call him the bad boy, if you will, Patrick,
Mhm.
played by Heath Ledger. And again, it's sort of it's a case of opposites do attract, and it's just such it's a funny and at points absurd, but yet everything is played with such heart and tender care that you can't help but have like a great smile on your face by the end of this movie. Like I think of that scene when they're all in the on the field, and they're all doing their like it's like I don't know, it's like a marching band prep or something, and then Ledger's character comes in and he does that song and dance number on
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
bleachers, and like that was a scene, as I said, like I had seen in bits and pieces over the years, but to like see that in the context of the movie, I mean, I was just like I was rip roaring laughing, just having a great time with it.
It's such a great scene because you don't know what's going to happen,
No,
um, and even him kind of being chased around by the security guards,
yeah,
is really fun, and it's such like it's such a movie thing, right? Where like when you're in high school, don't you just wish you could, oh, the girl I love, if I could just grab the mic and just sing out,
yep.
um, I think it's a Sinatra or Frankie Valli, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's the Frank. Yeah, the "I Love You, Baby"
Yeah,
or something like that. I
yeah,
forget the song title, but
and who knew? Like, I don't think he did much after that, but Ledger had a great voice. He was a good
I
singer.
know, I know. Again, multi talented. I mean, I could do a whole episode just on Heath, but I mean, it's
Mhm.
yeah, it's one of those moments where it feels it's clearly a teen comedy moment, but like I
Yeah,
said earlier, this movie sort of rises above the kind of quote unquote tropes, if you will. I mean, certainly they're there in this film. Like, you've got your
yeah,
prom scene, you've got, the quote unquote lovers quarrel, if you will. And,
sure,
like,
sure.
I mean, the music moment, like, but I don't know, there's such sincerity to this film that, like, certainly films that have come afterwards definitely sort of follow in this movie's tradition, but there's sort of an idea of this one coming first in a way. Like, it's this one sort of set the bar for all the other teen comedies of the era. I mean, I think of films like a Cinderella Story, and even to a lesser extent a movie like Mean Girls. Like,
Hmm.
it almost feels in a way they're sort of like hat tipping to 10 Things I Hate About You. And I think that just sort of speaks to this film's just sort of remarkable, having its finger on the pulse of not only the generation at the time, but sort of what works in these kind of movies.
Well, I think it's what it does really well is that it doesn't it plays with multiple styles of comedy a little bit. There's a lot of slapstick. There's
Mm-hmm.
some genuinely funny bits. There's the characters who are just basically lunatics living an everyday life. Like Allison Janney's character
Yeah, that's right.
she's only in 2 scenes, 3 scenes, whatever it is, and she's she's a nutcase, and it's hilarious.
He almost
And
steals the show in a lot of ways.
and I think it's almost like they knew that when they were editing, so they were like, we can't keep her in the rest of the movie
Yeah,
because Allison Jane is just she's also just one of those, like, whenever you see her in something, it's like a welcome presence. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
oh
okay,
yeah. No, you stop and take notice.
yeah, and I think this whole cast, for as young as they were at the time, most of them were child actors, so they were, in a weird way, this was almost like a transitional period from like the teenage stuff into the grown up stuff.
Yeah.
But I really loved the way uh, I don't know, the actors are just so genuine in it. Like when you have Allison Janney acting like a lunatic, flipping off the students, and you have Joseph Gordon-Levitt going, "What? Am I in the wrong office?" And she's like, "Okay, you're done now. Get out of here." It's just, um, the cast isn't just like goofing off and
No.
just whatever. There's sincere performances in it, even when the situations are like super outlandish. One of my favorite little bits in the movie is when David Krumholtz is coming up to uh, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Heath Ledger, and he like mistimes him running over to them because the track team almost plows right through him, and he's like, "I'm sorry," very like Kramerish. And then they're like, "Okay, so what's the news?" And it's like, "Well, we got to have this really silly bit and then get back into the story." I don't know. It just, and it works. It.
A lot of these, I mean, I'll be honest, I am not generally a fan of teen comedies. I just because they sort of fall into the formulaic and are like the characters are usually cutouts and there's no real story per se. I mean, like you can pretty much guess what's going to happen based on the title or even sometimes like how the
Sure.
poster was set up.
Right.
That's not the case with this film at all. And I mean, one that actually I feel is like the closest to it. And again, maybe it's because I saw it first and then saw this film afterwards. But a movie like Easy A feels very much in this wheelhouse where, yeah, it's a quote teen comedy, but it's smart, it's funny, and the characters actually feel and act like real people, even though there might be outrageous things. Like, I mean, Patrick is like, I mean, if you saw the guy in like real life or in school, you might be okay, maybe stay away from him. Like
Right.
there's something off there, but yet it all works within this world that they've created. And I think that's again, it's sort of the attention to detail. Whereas like in most of these again quote teen comedies, there's sort of cardboard cutouts where it's like, all right, you're the jock, you're the the girl next door, that's the quote bad boy, and yet everybody here, even when there is a type like David Krumholtz, who's sort of like the geeky nerd character, there's an element of sincerity that exists in everybody, and even like I said, Allison Janney, who's completely out of her mind in the movie, like it works. I don't know, it just everybody feels grounded, and even when the moments are so exaggerated, like even like the scene at the end where Kat is reading her her poem, and it's like it's one of those like moments like, oh, okay, it's a movie moment, but yet again I think just the quality of the performances, nobody's phoning it in or even leaning into camp, if you will, and that sometimes, like, again, any number of these movies, whether it's like uh Freaky Friday, for example, or other movies of that genre. Like, again, I throw back a Cinderella Story. They sort of like play into the type, and this movie sort of smartly avoids all of those little pratfalls. And so, I mean, that was something I really appreciated because, like, going into it, I was like, okay, it's going to be just like another teen comedy kind of a thing, and it's
Sure.
again, there are those moments, but it's not like it rises to the occasion and it keeps that momentum going from start to finish. So like by the end, like spoiler alert everybody if you haven't seen it, but like when Kat and Patrick get together, I mean, I know, shocker, it happens in a teen comedy, but like I know it just feels so earned, and it's not in your face. And in many ways, I almost think I was kind of surprised that it doesn't go like too soapy or too melodramatic, as a lot of these things are like it's very simple. Like, okay, like they get back together, like they, confess their feelings for each other, but like that's it. They don't have to beat you over the head with the, oh, let's show them in this shot in this moment. Like it's very natural, and I think that's
Yeah.
something that, again, a lot of other films that followed it. Again, I go back to Easy A is sort of like is sort of a one that's outside the mold, if you will. That again feels like, in many ways, it could be almost like a sister movie to this film, where it just sort of like is played for real, even though there are laughs, there are sort of outrageous moments and characters. You buy into it because you bought into the story and into the universe.
That's that's what I always call. If you ever listen to my show, I say this all the time. That's what I call emotional reality. Like it doesn't. Like we're big. Like genre fans, right? Sci-fi, and last episode we talked about Spider-Man. I know you're a big Dark Knight fan. So
No, really.
well, as am I, of course.
I know, right?
But it's but even something as simple as the recent my buddy and I were just talking about this last night, X-Men 97. Like,
Yeah.
if you can tell a wacky story, but if you have a really good emotional reality, then the audience will go along with it, because and the whole every movie is some form of heightened reality anyway.
Right.
Comedies, for sure. You get, like I said, you get slapsticky stuff. You get a scene where they have they throw the flyers for the
Oh,
Bogey Lowenstein's party, right?
yeah.
And they go down this gigantic thing. They would get in so much trouble for that in real life.
No, I was thinking about like how, I mean, I remember, sort of a side tangent, but my class for our quote senior prank, someone decided it was a good idea to spray paint part of the grassy knoll near the parking lot, and just spray painted into the grass. Class of 2010. Of course, I'm not confessing to anything here, everybody, but like, oh God, like, I mean, heads were rolling that day. I mean, it was like, oh boy, like they sat us all down in the gymnasium and stern lecture about, what you've done and graffitied the grass. And it's like,
Yep.
watching this, like, oh my God, like, there would be like disciplinary actions, like threatens to withhold diplomas or something.
Yep. Well, especially because it's the flyers say like free beer,
I know.
And it's like,
they're not hiding it.
Yeah, they're all like 16 years old. So, but at the same time, that's the fun of some of these movies, is that you can buy into their reality, because they're all selling it, really
Right.
well. And it was funny. I was thinking about this. It's like, this was the first time I ever saw Heath Ledger in anything. It was, but it was also like oddly familiar to have Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who was on 30 Rock, or 30 Rock. I knew I was going to do that. Third Rock from the Sun.
It's like,
because I was thinking about that earlier today. It's like, not to be confused with 30 Rock, and then I just freaking said it. And then Larissa Oleynik, who I had a huge crush on when I was a kid, from what was that show called? The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I used to love that show.
Oh my gosh. And it's kind of, I think it's like lost to time. I don't even know if you could find it anywhere, maybe YouTube or something.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wow. Talk about a trip down memory lane.
There was, and so I had this like huge crush on her, and I think this was the first movie I ever saw Julia Stiles in, but either way, having some of that familiar cast that I knew, and some some new people, it made for, and Andrew Keegan, I think, has played every jerk in every show, in every movie. Poor guy. He's probably a very nice guy, but he was always playing bully types in the 90s. But it was, again, it's like, so I knew some of them. I didn't know. I knew some I didn't, but it still helped to it helps to sell the world. Like I said, you have this really great emotional reality. You have this really great chemistry with all the actors.
Mm-hmm.
And and I was listening to there's a Pod Meets World, which is the Boy Meets World rewatch podcast.
Mm-hmm.
um, that some of the cast does, and they interviewed Andrew Keegan and Larissa Oleynik in separate episodes, and they mentioned 10 Things I Hate About You in both cases, and both of them were like, "Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It was kind of like summer camp, like we all became really close and blah blah blah." And I was like, "That's so cool to hear 25 years later," because they could easily just be like, "Oh, that movie. Oh, we had such a bad experience."
Right.
And you hear that plenty with successful movies.
They
um,
couldn't wait to get away from each other.
right. But and so I thought that was cool that separately they had said that about their experiences, and it shows. Like
That's the thing. You can
yeah,
tell this was not a phoned in performance. Like, there's genuine chemistry among the
yeah,
actors. Like, clearly everybody was having a great time with this. I mean,
yeah.
how could you not, honestly?
And it was one of those things where I was probably 25 years ago, so I was like 12, maybe like 12, 13 when I first saw it. And so I was kind of at the right age where
Mm,
I was like, oh my gosh, like this movie's hilarious. And it's one of those things where, you revisit stuff from your childhood as you
right,
get older, and some of it still works, some of it doesn't. Some of it you're just like, yeah, I could still look past it because it's that important to my childhood or whatever, whatever. But this was
right.
one of those examples where even as I'm getting older and like showing it to friends of mine that we're in our 20s, 30s, and we're all laughing, we're all having a good time.
Yep.
There's no like, dude, I don't want to watch like a teenager movie. You know what I mean? Like it's themes and everything are a little bit more universal than that.
That's the thing. I mean, a lot of these kind of movies, like I've said, they sort of exist in a moment, but yet once that moment has passed, they fall out of style, and you go back and you're like, boy, this is really kind of cringy, or you just, oh, okay, that I can see how that might have been at the time. This movie, no, like,
Yeah,
clearly it holds up, and there's a reason why. Again, there's a reason why we're talking about it now. A 25-year-old film, it still works, and I think that is partly because it's, yeah, it's of its moment. Like, hey, okay, you can tell this is the late 90s, early
sure.
2000s, but like, even then, just the way the characters interact, like, nobody feels, I'll say it again, like a broken record, but nobody feels like a stock character. Like,
Right.
everybody fits in this little world, whether it's the jock, whether it's Ledger's character. Like, everybody has their part, but it works. Like, it's a seamless transition, and that's something that I have not seen replicated. Again, with the exception of, I mentioned Easy A, none of these,
Mhm.
like, they all tend to fall into that stereotype, and it's like, all right, another teen comedy. I think there was even
Sure,
like
sure.
a spoof movie or something like that.
Right, right.
And like, this movie is not like, it's smart, it's funny, and it's effective. Like, you can't help but be caught up in it. Like, a lot of times these movies, like, all right, it's almost like background noise. This is
Hmm.
not. Like, you don't want to take your eyes off the screen because you don't know what's going to happen, and you're so caught up in this. And that's something I can say rarely happens with me when I watch these kind of films. Like, this is a very powerful, and again, it feels kind of funny saying like you're getting all this kind of emotion from like a teen quote unquote comedy, but yet that's the beauty of it. Like, again, you can say that's a hat tip to Shakespeare, but like, I
Yeah,
mean, there's a reason why we still talk about his work and those plays, and
right.
why these kind of films resonate with an audience, because it's something a little bit deeper than just another quote teen comedy.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, uh, being, men in our 30s talking about this movie and really like unabashedly loving it though.
That's the thing.
But I think what's like the performances are all really solid. And
Yeah.
and especially because because in those interviews I mentioned, especially I remember Larissa Oleynik, they asked her specifically about Heath Ledger,
Mm.
and she said we all knew that he was going to be something special,
Yeah.
and it's clear, like he,
Mm-hmm.
I mean they're all
Oh yeah.
like you said, they're not phoning it in. um but what I had read was that after this movie came out, he was offered all sorts of similar
Yeah.
parts and
Yeah.
turned them all down. And and like took a year off of acting,
Yeah.
and then I don't remember what he did after. I know like A Knight's Tale came a
Yeah.
couple years later, and then of course there's that. I don't know. He was in some sort of, I think it was a Marvel movie, like played some sort of clown character. I don't know. It didn't do
Yeah,
very
it
well.
is. It is big swing. Yeah.
But it was a. But you can, but it's strange to say, because well, obviously I didn't know him at all, but watching the movie, you get the vibe that it's like, man, this guy, like, he just was on another level. Like,
Yeah.
there's like this, the script was talking to him. He is Patrick Verona, and all the other actors are great and everything, but I don't know. There's just, and maybe it's just because of his character type, which I think he plays so well, which is he is the guy that everybody's afraid of. Everybody thinks, like you were saying earlier, there's all these rumors about him, and
Yeah.
and he kind of and what he does really well is he plays to that when he's at school, but as the characters talk to him and get to know him more, you can tell that he doesn't like that.
Right.
Like he's more sensitive than that, and he's trying to, and he genuinely does fall for Julia Stiles, for Kat.
Yeah.
And that was something on my last rewatch. I realized I was watching it going, they're doing a really great job of genuinely kind of falling for each other. Like I buy it in the movie.
You do. No, you do. And again, I think it's a testament to both of their skills as actors. But no, you buy it. There's something. There's a chemistry there, and like I said, with the way you watch Ledger, I mean, he's transfixing in the film. Like you can't help but see, okay, what the hell is he going to do now?
Sure.
Like there's that moment, like in the classroom when he lights up the cigarette. Like, I mean, that's an iconic scene right there in and of itself.
He plays with the flame,
Yeah. It's like, okay, God, this guy's he's on a whole other level. But yeah. This is a situation where I think in the wrong hands, like I'm always like cautious. An actor, makes whatever they're given. But like, this is a situation where I think, like, in the wrong hands, this could have been like a very weird or almost a standoffish character that the audience couldn't be invested in. I think it's a combination of Ledger's just charm and charisma as an actor and as a person, but then what he was able to do, like he's on another level in this movie. I mean, that's could be the case with any film that he was in throughout his short but beautiful career. And you just see it in this film. Like he's somewhere else, and it works so magnificently. Like I said, you can't help but just be like, what the hell is he going on? Like, I mean, like you can do a whole spin-off show, movie just on, the adventures of Patrick and what, he did before this movie.
Well, yeah, which he lays out, and maybe that would be kind of boring because he was taking care of his grandpa before he died. But it helps that he's obviously one of the main characters. I mean, it's an ensemble, so
big time.
Technically, the movie's about him, I guess. 10 Things I Hate About You, and it's him, but
yeah.
Although I gotta say though, so this is like something only you would only know if you like lived through it, which is that the movie poster and like the video jacket had 10 Things I Hate About You. The U made an arrow pointing at Heath Ledger, right, pointing at Patrick. But the CD, the soundtrack, it was pointing to Bianca, and I remember my sister telling me that, like, she bought it, she was listening to it, which, by the way, that soundtrack still slaps.
Oh yeah, perfect movie. Yeah, yep.
And Nico, if you're listening, Caruso, I just said slaps for real this time, not ironically.
You get your points today.
And I remember my sister saying that. She's like, yeah, so that's kind of weird. Maybe it's just the way the thing's spaced out. And it always bugged the hell out of me. Like, every now and then I think about it. It's like Papyrus, right? Yeah, you just go, it's like, but it was pointing at her. It's not about her,
I'm looking at it right now. So I could see how that could be irritating.
I've always been like a weirdly. There's my cat's tail in the camera.
That's all good.
Um,
Welcome.
um, excuse me. I've always been weirdly attuned to movie posters and merchandise and stuff.
Yeah.
Like fun fact: I've never really told anyone this before, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it on air.
All right.
The fact that the marketing for Batman '89 was just the logo has always annoyed the crap out of me. I wish we had gotten a poster that had the characters on it. Like it's always sort of irritated me. When I was a kid, I would like draw pictures and see like, how could this look different? So,
Well, we've broken news tonight. That everybody put down your virtual pitchforks. No, honestly, hey, I respect that. Because it's I tell you, not to get off on a tangent, but like that's a poster that people sort of hold up as almost like a golden idol at this point. Where
sure.
I've actually never heard of. And I wouldn't say you're like outright criticizing it per se, but like I've never heard the counter to that poster. So thank you for sharing that.
That's just it's just one of those like silly things that
Yeah.
it's like a papyrus thing. Every now and then you think about it and just go, what were they thinking?
Why?
But,
Why?
But anyway, getting back to the movie,
Yeah.
You have these really great performances, but they also have great arcs too. Like I said with Verona's arc, him being just seeming like this like criminal badass, whatever. Don't talk to him, don't look at him, and then it turns out he's actually a really sweet, sensitive guy. And probably the turning point in the movie that where the arcs really start to collide is the party scene, right? Again, a teenage movie trope, but I think they're all pretty organic in this film. It doesn't. It's like, of course there's going to be a beer party. Of course there's going to be the prom scene. Of course there's going to be the makeup at Kiss and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's none
natural.
of it feels, yeah. And it's, because there's probably 3 or 4 other movies you could point to and go, yeah, that one didn't do it as well.
Right.
Like there's a reason that, 25 years later, I could go into work tomorrow and talk to somebody and be like, hey, you ever see 10 Things I Hate About You? And I'm certain any women my age would turn to me and go, oh my gosh, I love that movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. This is a movie where I don't even know if you could make it today. Not that it's controversial by any means, but just there's a wonderful pacing to this film that I think would be completely turned around if somebody was to make it today or make a version like it would. I can't honestly see a number of scenes in this film making it past the cutting room because they'd be like, oh, it's unnecessary. I could see someone saying we don't need to do Heath Ledger's dance scene, and again, those are moments that make this movie stand out. They're great moments for the characters. And again, it gives us just a more engaging story. And so this film does feel like a time capsule in a way to a forgotten era that, because like everything today, it's like, okay, if it doesn't move the plot along in 60 seconds, we cut it out. And it's like, that's how you get great character moments. And that there's so many in this particular movie. But we haven't even talked about Larry Miller's character. I mean, he's wonderful in every role you see him in. I actually just rewatched the Nutty Professor recently, and again, it's a small role. He plays the dean, but like even in that, like he's always a standout. And again, he's not the star of this film, but even he has a nice little arc in this movie. And again, he's the overprotective dad, but like again, I sound like a broken record, but it's not the cliche. Like it feel again, you can see where people saw this movie after the fact, like, okay, just do that and spruce it up here or cut it out there. But like
sure
there's something about this movie kind of setting the tone in a way, like everything feels organic. Like I feel like today, like an overprotected dad character, you might cringe, but it works so well in this film. And again, I think that's that's a testament to Larry, who just sort of he always has got like a zinger and just sort of his even his cadence in a way. He just kind of finds a way to make even the most like banal line come alive, and
Yeah,
it can't
yeah.
help but make you laugh.
Well, it's right up to the edge of like too much or cringy or whatever. But I think he's so funny and he's believable enough
Yeah.
that I don't know, because I think about when he's like outside exercising and it's such a goofy scene. And again,
Yep.
that's probably a scene that would get cut, like you were saying, if it was
Yep.
made today. But that scene is so it doesn't move the plot along, other than it's just Bianca pleading again, please let me go to prom. Which
Right.
again, somebody in an editing room would go, we already have this scene, we don't need it.
Yep.
But because he is adding some physical comedy and he's saying just ridiculous, dorky dad stuff, like just I okay, because I'll admit that my mom would say stuff like that. It's like, I'm down, I got the 411. Like my mom, like she would say goofy stuff like that, thinking that she sounds like we did, right?
Right.
And we'd be like,
Down with
Mom,
the kids. Yeah.
right? It's like, no, Mom, that's not how that works. And it's just, so it's just funny as hell having a character like that. But then you get the scene at towards the end when he has a really great heart to heart moment with Kat, and I think that whole runner, that arc of him being like, go to school here so you're closer to home. It's never directly said, and I don't know if there's any deleted scenes. Maybe it was a first draft thing, but you don't really know what happened to their mom other than she left at some point.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, it makes his character make a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Why he pushes back against Kat wanting to leave, but then ultimately when he goes up to her and at the end is like, we gotta, you're grown up, I have to deal with this,
Right.
and again, rewatching it very recently with now as a dad, I'm like blubbering at this scene going, oh my God, like, wow, like I never realized, maybe it's just you with the parent eyes on, but I never realized how really beautiful that scene is and how well performed it is. Even just something as simple as like she hugs him at the end and he doesn't know what
Yeah.
to do, so he just kind of taps her arm, but it's beautiful. It totally works.
No, and again, that's a testament to his skills as an actor, where he can do the comedy, he can do the physical stuff, but then when you need to bring it home with some heart, he's there. Like again, this is
Yep.
another situation where in the wrong hands, like the dad would be kind of either over the top too much. He finds that perfect balance.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that scene, I mean, you can't help but have the heartstrings pulled by the end of it.
Well, and another thing I like about it is sort of the hilarity of he makes this rule thinking it's this unbeatable rule,
I know.
and then when they find a way around it, he's like, well, he kind of begrudgingly is like, okay, go, like it, he lets them go to the party, lets them go to prom, and that really makes me laugh, thinking like, he still could have been like, nah, I changed my mind, we're not doing that,
Right.
but I think it sells sort of the humor of the movie that the dad was just like, well, I'm not going to win this one, so he lets the kids get away with it. I mean, not get away with it because they followed the rule, right? But you know what I mean. It's just kind of funny to think about. Like he's sort of hoisted on his own petard, and he's kind of pissed off about it the rest of the movie.
Yes, stone hard logic right there.
Yeah.
No, it's go ahead.
No, I was just no. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say like that's another point. Like the dynamic between the three of them, it's so pitch perfect. Like again, I sound like a broken record, but like so many of these movies where it's just like, okay, parent, child, like everybody has the role. Like they come across as a real family. And again, I
Yes.
think that's something that this film never forgets. It's those small tender moments, like even when like Kat and Bianca are just sort of like talking amongst themselves, like I know it comes across as like a sisterly bond, and like
Yeah.
there's moments of like I want to call it like overt drama, but like it gets a bit, again, this is still like a comedy, but there's like moments where like, yeah, this is some really powerful stuff here.
Yeah. Well, it's great because the story just works. Like the script
Hmm.
sort of figures it's asking questions that
Hmm.
we didn't know we wanted answers to. Why do Kat and Joey hate each other? We
Hmm.
find out. You know, what you know, why is what happened to Patrick? What's the
Yep.
true story?
Yep.
We find out. Um, it's the movie, but it also lets all that stuff happen kind of naturally too.
Right. There's nothing. I've said it before. There's nothing. They don't beat you over the head with
Yeah.
this. Like everything arrives at its natural point, which is again, I think this. I mean, this is a critique of like modern movies in general, where there's like almost this need to like spoon feed you everything by the like the final 10 minutes of the third act, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
just letting things play out and letting the characters dictate the story as opposed to the story dictating to the characters. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, particularly in these kind of movies, that's why I think for me personally, they always tend to fall flat. Is it's just sort of like it's style over substance,
Yeah.
and that is not the case with this movie. I mean, again, there's the flashy moments, but there's
Sure.
so much heart there, and it's always leading with what are the characters doing. Like you said, it's answering questions. We find out about what happened between Kat and Joey. We find out what happened with Patrick and his path. Like past, you see characters go through these wonderful arcs and transitions. Like again, even like Bianca, she goes from like I'm gonna call her like a little princess at the start, but she's sort of like
Mm,
sort of like that spoiled brat mentality. Like, and she
sure.
sort of she blossoms by the end of it. Like everybody has that natural evolution, and again, it's sort of like for a dynamic you might see in your own family or with your own friends even.
Sure. And and I think that's what helps to sell it is that they call attention to it again. Very like again the Bogey Lowenstein party is a great example,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really great cinematic storytelling because all the characters get to be in one place,
Right.
and they all kind of learn something that they don't want to learn
Mm.
in that scene, or or are challenged in some way, right? That's script writing, isn't it? You got to challenge your characters, but they're
You passed the
but
test.
right, and you have this really great, and you get these really great moments where Patrick and he drives Kat home, and she tries to kiss him, and he's like, no, not today, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
which I just always remember as a kid feeling like just on that tangent for a second, um, feeling like she was being such a jerk in that moment, like what the heck. And then like as I got older I was going, oh no, wait, she is being a jerk. Like that wasn't just me being a
No.
stupid boy. No, he was in the right. He didn't want to just take advantage of her,
Right.
and she
Right.
got angry at him. And I was like, and it all works out, of course, but
Oh yeah.
at the same time, watching that scene, you see how what goes through his head and what goes through her head,
Mm-hmm.
and why she stays mad at him and and how he kind of reconciled it. And then right after that, you get Bianca and Cameron pulling up, and he just like lays into her like, what the hell? I did all this, and you treat me like garbage. And what's great is that she's she kind of realizes it in the moment, like, oh wait, I have been a jerk, and he has been a nice guy. And it's kind of a, I don't know. In both instances, it works so well, and there's a reason that those scenes have stuck with me my whole life, right? It's like, oh, they're well performed, and there's nuance there. It's not just like, hey, we're gonna kiss. Oh no, we're not. Like, and it's also not played for laughs. He's like, oh, your breath smells like puke. Get out of
Right.
here. Like
Yeah.
neither one of them are played for laughs. They're these genuine moments, and then you get the great line, which I never really got until I got older. It's like later when Patrick and Cameron are talking, he's like, she kissed me. He's like, where? He's like, in the car. that that always made me laugh because I was just like, because as I got older, I was like, oh my god, am I Cameron? Is that how I would react? And someone would look at me like, that's not what I meant, idiot. But but again, very very sincere moments that put this movie above just a teen comedy. Like there's genuine
Right.
emotion and storytelling going on here.
Those are probably some of my favorite, if not my favorite, parts of the whole film. Just that
Mm-hmm.
whole dynamic. I mean, it's a wonderfully written scene, but just what they bring to it, just sort of, again, you said it elevates it
Yep.
in such a way above the usual sort of, you know, garbage that sometimes is shoveled in these kind of movies. I know I sound, like a great critic here, but no, I mean it's sort of funny. I mean, like I said, I saw this film much later on, and so like it was sort of funny to watch those various scenes and sort of like you have flashbacks like to your own time in high
Sure.
school, and like you
Sure.
remember like, okay, wow, role reversal here, and
Mm-hmm,
like,
mm-hmm.
okay, I was in this person's shoes. Like it's I know it was kind of enjoyable to look at it on that level, especially I mean, by the time I finally saw this film from start to finish, it was like 10 years after high school, so it was kind of
Hmm.
it was a unique experience to look back
Sure.
on everything and sort of you have that sort of twinge of nostalgia and just sort of like again it's a wonderful love letter in a way to that time where you literally think you know everything and you really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It
It's
and I think that's also what sells the movie is focusing mostly on the kids. Like there's
yeah,
really only like three adult characters, right?
yeah,
There's Allison Janney, there's Larry Miller,
Larry.
and Mr. Morgan. That actor's name escapes me. The English teacher who's freaking hysterical in the movie. Um,
Daryl Mitchell.
Daryl Mitchell, yes, he's fantastic. Um, but I mean, he was in a bunch of '90s stuff too.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, but again, or there's also the coach too. So so again, there's very few like adult quote unquote characters, but I think that's what helps the
Well,
film because we get to just focus on our core ensemble.
well, that's the thing. I feel like, again, today you'd have the necessary quote adult character who would simply be there to hand out pearls of wisdom and not even be a character, just sort of like a stand-in or a sounding board. Like I like it that it's really in the kids world.
Yep.
It's not them sort of going up against adulthood, even though they're all on the cusp of it. It's like this is their world in this time of their lives, and they're figuring it they're figuring out shit as it goes along. It's
Yep.
not like someone's there to spoon feed them advice. There's not the wise old teacher. Like, I mean, like, sure, Larry Miller gets a few points, but it's very it's a kids it's a teen movie, and I
Yeah.
like that it respects it enough to not be like, we're not going to dole out all the answers. We're not going to necessarily, bring in the sage elder who's going to,
Yeah. Yeah.
impart, this is what happens in the real world. Everybody, like, it knows its place, I guess, is what I would say.
Well, and I think that's what that's what helps. That's what sells the movie so well is not having that like guidance counselor,
Yeah,
give the right advice at the right moment or something,
yeah,
and it's all character based and it moves the story along. But it's interesting to have that, where it's the kids that figure everything out that have to
right.
go through all the stuff, and it's also highly mundane stuff, right? But
Oh yeah, no, this is not end of the world type
yeah,
dilemmas here.
yeah,
This
there's
is not.
it's not life or death or anything,
No, we're not.
but
No,
but when you're that age and
it is the end of the world.
yeah, and I think that they all sell that really well, and I think Larissa Oleynik, especially, just I think she pulls off being kind of the sweet princessy, like like we all knew somebody a little prissy
We all
like
knew
that,
someone like her. Yeah,
but
yeah,
I think she's also so charming and cute that you
it
kind of
works.
forgive her for it, and also later when she kind of drops the selfishness. It
Yeah.
works. But it also feels organic. It doesn't just feel like test audiences didn't like this. We got to figure this out. You know what I mean?
No, no, this does not. Again, so many movies today feel like they are made in a boardroom. This movie is clearly not,
Right.
and like just sort of in prep for our talk today, I rewatched it because I just wanted to sort of be sort of soak it all in again. And
Mm.
I mean, it's a cliche to say it. They don't make them like this anymore. They really
Yeah.
don't. And I mean, I guess like you can't always like you're always in search of that impossible last best thing. But there's again, there's a reason why we're talking about this film tonight, and so many other films in this genre have gone by the wayside and will be lost to history because
Sure.
they just lack that magic spark that this film has. And
Mm.
and again, just rewatching it, I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, like this is a classic. I mean, I don't even think that's an overstatement in saying that this is a certified classic. It goes beyond the label of a teen comedy as far as I'm concerned.
I 100% agree. And what works really well about it, you mentioned, we talked, you mentioned about the costumes and everything. So the wardrobe gives it away immediately that this is like late 90s,
Oh
early
yeah,
2000s. Even the soundtrack really does,
I know. Yeah,
very, very like girl punk rock stuff, that,
yeah.
there's still stuff like that around. And, I still love the soundtrack, but that was very much of its time. And,
Oh
but
yeah.
I would say that the story itself, the film itself, is fairly timeless. Like
Oh yeah.
you notice that there's no cell phones or social media or whatever,
Right.
but there's a charm to it that
Mm-hmm.
makes me really love it. Going like I forget all that watching it. Right, I'm not sitting there going, oh, that's right, this is a 25-year-old movie. Like
Exactly.
it's
Yeah. No,
subconsciously, but it doesn't matter. The story sells itself.
that's the thing. You buy into it. Again, there's not a cell phone in sight. Like
Right, right.
it's again, it's certainly of its time. But that's again another one of the charms about it is it's in that time. It's forever in that moment, and it's kind of fun to revisit that and just sort of
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
get lost in that world. And I mean, like I said, the story is old as time, so you can that's going to work. And I think that's part of the reason why this film holds up. This isn't like a oh so and so posts something on social media and oh Facebook photo blows up, so that's creating the like what I mean. Like there's none
Right,
of that.
right.
Like oh, did you check out Patrick's Instagram page? Like it just there's none of that. Like it's it's again that certainly would feel dated and certainly more like a sore thumb. And again
Mm.
it's the beauty of the story that I think kind of again there's a reason why we're talking about it.
Right, right. And I will say that the oh my gosh, what was I going to say? Like it doesn't as another thing that holds up really well. I can't really think of any like jokes that don't land in like a 2024 setting. You know what I mean? Um,
No, no,
there maybe there's one or two, but for the most part, like
none come to mind. No.
yeah, there's I'm not sitting here going like, well, that was that's kind of cringy now or something because I mean, how many movies that are
Oh
this
yeah.
old or even slightly more recently, like Mean Girls, does have some cringe parts to it. Um,
Right.
but but this one, it just, and that's sort of what I've realized about comedy and why I think there's what makes a successful comedy is I can't not to get like topical or political or whatever. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. I, I I absolutely hate the idea of like, oh, this person got canceled, everything's woke and blah 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 blah. Drives me absolutely insane because it's like, there's funny stuff you can do or say that doesn't, that isn't mean spirited or doesn't
Right.
or isn't an innuendo or whatever. Things can just be funny just to be funny, not to push the envelope, not to cause controversy, not to get people thinking or whatever. It's like
So,
some right comedians want to do.
No, I mean, no, you raise absolutely valid points because there's that kind of comedy, and I almost shudder to even call it comedy because it's more just like, insult and in your face, and like I said, it's meant to cause, provoking reactions. That stuff immediately feels completely dated. Like you could,
Yeah,
time stamp it, you know, date and exact moment, and it's sort of forever etched in that moment and that
sure.
particular point. You know, that in a lot of ways is lazy writing to me. That's lazy comedy because,
Mm-hmm.
not to go down a rabbit hole, but like, anybody can, like, poke fun at whoever's president, like, and oh, haha, but like in 5 to 10 years, like it's almost like, okay, well, it's not funny anymore because, time has marched on. Whereas like if you have a well written joke or even just sort of, playful banter, like if it's smart and if it's effective, it doesn't have to be nuanced. It doesn't have to be sort of layered. If there's sort of genuine heart behind it and sort of, creative passion, not just, oh, well, this will get so and so riled up, or
Right,
this will
right.
be topical. Like it works so much better, I think. And again, that's the kind of stuff that lasts forever in a lot of ways. I mean, again, not to go down like, other rabbit holes, but like you can look at, comedians like, you know, Rodney Dangerfield or even like a Don Rickles. Like there's sort of like a timelessness to those kind of people where, like, you know, yeah, probably no one would make those jokes today, but like it's sort of they got away with it because there was that sincerity behind it, that sort of that, they weren't doing it to like, oh, I'm going to make a point here, or, gonna, check a box here. Like it's sort of, it comes from, quote, the heart, if you will. And I get
Hmm.
that sort of what I feel from, this film, to sort of tie it back to topic. Like
Yeah.
everything is coming from the heart. It's not like, again, clearly no one's like, oh, well, how are people going to react in, 50 years when they watch? Like if it's sincere and it's all in good fun, it's going to last, and
Yeah.
it's going to always be timely, if you will, because those experiences and those reactions are universal. I mean,
Hmm.
again, not to get really, deep with it, but like, this film sort of like touches on like that, you know human condition aspect that is not often associated with these kind of movies. And again, I think that's why it continues to resonate and just pack such an emotional and hilarious punch. I mean, like I said, I rewatching it, I mean, I just big smile on my face,
Yep. Yep.
laughed. I mean, just like you just feel good. Like it's a damn good feel good movie.
Yeah. And it's and I think it does exactly what it sets out to do. It's like, here's
Bingo.
this moment in time where you you're young and you don't know anything, but you think you know everything, and you're falling in love at first sight, and you do anything for this girl, and there's that heightened reality, but the emotional reality really sets in, and that's
Been
what,
there.
and and I think that's what sells it. That's why we can talk about it so many years later why you didn't watch it as a kid, but you're
Right.
watching it as an adult, going, oh my gosh, I get it.
Yeah.
So you kind of retroactively are like,
Yeah.
oh, yep, I've been there, you
Oh no,
know,
seriously. Yeah.
and
Yep.
and then because this film could, very easily have been like a, you know, I don't know, like John Hughes was kind of the master at it, right? Just
Yeah.
take like,
It,
because it takes all the kids seriously, right?
well,
There's
it treats them as people. It doesn't treat
yes,
them as cardboard cutouts, or like you're the kid role. Like, again, there's a reason why, just to go on the John Hughes thing, like all those characters in, like, Breakfast Club or 16 Candles, or even something as, silly and out there as, Uncle Buck. Like they're treated like real people. They're not,
yeah,
cutouts or stick figures. Like there's genuine heart and soul to each of them, and I think that's why, again, those movies are frankly timeless. And there's a reason why this movie has that timeless feel, because
yeah,
you're treating it with that sincerity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have to ask you, did you ever watch the I guess there was a TV show that came out years later. I never saw it, but in doing some research for it, I discovered that there was a quote spin-off or like reimagining that came out. I want to say it was like around 2010, I believe. It did not last long. Like we're talking 2008, excuse me. It premiered in 2009. It lasted 20 episodes. So again, I throw that out there. Did you ever catch the 10 Things I Hate About You TV show that aired on, let me just get on the ABC Family?
Um, I watched one episode. I don't remember like why. I was at a friend's house, and I think it like was like next up is 10 Things I Hate About You, and they were like, oh, they made it into a TV show. I couldn't
Yeah.
tell you what episode it was. They're like, do you want to watch this episode with me? And I was like, sure. And I thought it was god awful. Like it was sort of in name only. Like they did exactly what you're saying. The movie didn't. It kind of turned everybody into a caricature.
Interesting.
And I didn't care for that. Like Cameron was really kind of like the wussy one, and Kat was more of a bitch. Like not like I don't know. Julia Stiles still has some. She's like bitchy, but she's not. It's not so like groan
I mean,
inducing unbelievable. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Well, she's the shrew character. But
Right.
again,
Right.
in the wrong hands, that's or I should say, someone that's sort of leaning into an archetype, or again, putting something before character. Yeah, I could see how you could arrive at that.
Yeah, and but but again, she toes the line really well. The only
Yeah, she
character that's
does.
kind of irredeemable in a quote unquote is Joey, and he's like the bully character, but at the same time, like we don't really want at the time. Nowadays, that character would have some sort of redemption arc,
Oh, sure,
but
sure.
back then it was just like, no, this kid just needs to get punched in the face,
No, I mean that was
and that's what happens.
that was a character arc in and of itself. That was closure.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's and again having kind of that great kind of female empowerment moment. The damsel saves herself, whatever.
Yeah,
She's the one that beats him up and takes him down, and again I like that the movie doesn't make a big deal about that. That like,
right.
oh, he got beat up by a girl or something like that. It's just like his teacher just makes fun of him later, and that's about it.
No, exactly. Again, it doesn't beat you over the head in this film. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I feel again, modern movies today, there would probably be like 30 different endings before you get to the reunion of Kat and Patrick, and like
Sure.
again, there's just sort of that simplicity that this film has. That again, I mean, there's a reason why I don't often watch these kind of films, because they're trite and they're boring and they're overly predictable. And certainly, I mean, this is a teen comedy at its heart, and so you kind of know where it's going to go, but you're so invested in the characters that you don't mind going along for this ride. Whereas like
Right.
any other you pick out any Netflix film and it's like, okay,
Sure.
I can guess the resolution before the credits start.
Right. Right. And I think that's a testament to the writing and everything, that they could have easily gone the less predictable route and
Mhm.
had them not get together, but they're still friends or something, whatever. But the movie, it gives them the happy ending, and I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, in a day and age where it's like we can't just have the happy ending. There has to be a subversion of expectations or whatever. Even in the most recent animated Garfield film, which I saw with my daughter, I was like, it, I
Did
don't
your
want to. I'm
cat
not
go?
going to. He did not go. No. But the kiddo, she thinks of herself as enough of a cat that she was cat enough for everybody. Um, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but also, save your money. It's it's they do predictable things in it, but they try to subvert your expectation of the predictability of it, and when movies nowadays try and do it, it just reeks to me. It just
does.
reeks
Yep.
of
Yep.
well, we can't just give the character a happy ending. We have to have some twist in that happiness or something. Or we were going to give the happy ending if it's not a kids movie like Garfield.
Right.
And we're not going to give them the happy ending, but it's still a sweet ending. It's a bittersweet ending, and sometimes I'm just like, it's always my argument for Dark Knight Rises. I'm like, when people push back on it, my argument is always, isn't it okay that the heroes get a happy ending? Let's just let this Bruce Wayne just have his happy ending,
I am so glad that you said that, because I'm actually, spoiler alert, everybody. I'm doing an episode later this summer that is going to be just about that whole point on endings, and that is my biggest issue with sort of modern Hollywood, if you will. They don't know how to end a movie. Like,
Yes.
just end the damn thing. Sometimes it's okay to end a movie, to tie up the loose threads, to give the characters a happy ending. Oh, I preach, brother, preach.
And I think some things don't need that. Some things don't. It's the twist is what makes it work.
Oh, sure. Again, depends on the film, exactly, genre, absolutely.
Right. But it just feels like nowadays it's like there's like this mandate of some sort of third act twist.
Oh, no. I feel
whatever.
like today, if you, again, made this movie, Patrick would probably, either get hit by a bus or something and be in a body cast for the, credit reel, or like, Kat would decide, oh, I'm leaving you and I'm so unhappy with life. Like, I mean, I just feel like there would be too much extra emphasis to be like, okay, let's just nix the happy ending, because that's what they are expecting, so we're going to really subvert you and then subvert you again.
Well, but there's something to be said about you watching the movie, having a big smile on your face. How could you not? And even just kind of the very sincere ending of they're going to be okay.
I don't need to know anymore.
This story is over, and then even having kind of the fun of the camera pans up and the band is playing on the roof.
Right.
Like, it's just like this is fun.
Thank you.
This stuff doesn't,
it's a movie, folks.
I rewatched School of Rock recently.
Oh, another good film.
I forgot that's how that movie ended, with them in his little makeshift studio singing and stuff, and I was like, and I kept watching the credits because of it. I was like, well, this is far more interesting than waiting around for Blade to show up at the end of the next Marvel movie to be like, I'm gonna be in the next movie next summer.
Exactly.
And then it's just like, I'm super guilty of sitting through all those.
Oh, sure.
Of course.
No, yeah.
But there's something to be said about having the end credits be something that's fun to watch before we get to like the tease of the next thing. John Hughes actually did a lot of post-credit scenes.
No, Ferris Bueller is a great example of that. At the very end, what are you waiting for? It's over. Go home.
And what's funny about that? On that tangent for a second, I remember going to see Deadpool with my best friend, and I turned to him and I was like, "Dude, what if the post-credit scene was like Ferris Bueller?" And then that's what happened. He shows up and goes, "You're still here?" And he was like, "Dude, you knew that." I was like, "I didn't. I swear to God." Like, but it hit me. I'm like, this is Ryan Reynolds. Like, this, he's gonna do. It's gonna be a Ferris Bueller bit.
Yeah.
So I was not surprised by that. But it was just funny to be like, wouldn't that be funny if that happened? And then, of course, it did. And then I'll never live down the "you knew that." Like, I actually really didn't. I promise.
You had clairvoyance to the movie right there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's something, it's like this is a good example. If the movie doesn't need to be all twisty and weird or push the envelope, it can just be fun in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of automatically became a classic in its own right.
Right.
and it's a lot of movies don't do that. A lot of movies. I mean, how many movies come out a year, and
Exactly.
and even worse nowadays with Hulu and Apple and Netflix and all that other shit. But it, and sometimes I just want to sit down and watch a really good movie that I could recite to you right now.
Right.
But and that's all I need. I don't need it to be anything wacky or crazy or have this big third act reveal that Joey is Kat's long lost brother or something. Like no, it could just like the reveal is she finds out that there was this bet going on, and she's understandably furious about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's almost better than any sort of twist, because then you
Yeah.
watch the movie and go, well, I wouldn't forgive him. Is she going to forgive him? Like, what's going to happen? The movie's not over yet, And again, like the movie was smart about that. It's let's kind of tense the audience up that maybe this won't work out, but then it does.
Well, yeah, no. Again, that's sort of the beauty of it, where you're so invested in the world and in the character's journey that you sort of consider all of the obstacles and options before the very end. Like, I mean, that's one of those moments. I mean, I remember the first time I watched, I'm like, oh, maybe they don't actually. Maybe this is one of those movies where it's going to be kind of bittersweet at the end, where they'll part friends, but that'll be the end of it. So but I mean, obviously it delivers that happy ending. But again, the movie. You're invested so much by that point that you're willing to sort of go along with whichever direction they end up taking, and that's not something that a lot of these movies do very well, or even at all. And even as the case, in sort of other genres, like being able to have that confidence to sort of take the audience on an emotional roller coaster, if you will, where like you're playing in your head like all the different possibilities and scenarios and what if moments, and then finally reaching that moment that we all want deep down, but then it sort of is even more satisfying because we've gone through the rigors of like, okay, will they, won't they, kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah, and it's really and it's just, I don't know, we've talking for like an hour about how great a movie is, and it is nuanced, it is layered, it's interesting, but more than anything, it's just fun, it's entertaining. That's all it needs to be, but it sets itself apart, like you said, from these other teen movies, because it's taking everything seriously, because the emotional reality for the characters is this is serious, this is really happening to us, and that's what sells it, as opposed to just being what adults think teenagers do.
Bingo.
Or whatever, you know what I mean?
No, I mean the folks who wrote and directed this film, they were teenagers. Like, this wasn't someone trying to like, what would a teenage like? I mean, you can really feel the sense of experience, a lived experience, as opposed to just sort of composites. Again, it's a brilliant film, and there's a reason it holds up. Before we tie this, put a bow on this one, who's your favorite character in the film? Probably, I know, so that's a loaded question, because everybody has such a role in this film.
That's I might give it to, I'd probably just give it to Michael, to David Krumholtz's character.
Oh, okay.
Because he just gets some of the funniest lines in it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why, but it's like in my brain now that repeating something is really funny. So like at the one point when Ledger storms off and he comes up to to camera, and he's like, "Don't say shit like that to him. People can hear you." It just that's like stuck in my head. So every now and then, like when I want to like mess with my friends or something, like I'll just repeat something they said. I do it to my sister all the time, and it pisses her off, but I think it's hilarious. But I mean, really, there's not a bad character in the bunch, but he has some of the best lines in it, and I just kind of like how kind of goofy he is, especially considering characters he'd later play. Like in Superbad, he's this like really like dick, like he's only in the one scene. He's like, "Oh, I want to see a fight, man." I'm just like, Oh my God, that's Michael. You know.
I know. Yeah, he's a wonderful actor. Again, he elevates any film in any role,
Yeah.
big or small. Absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely would co-sign. He's a memorable character. I love Allison Janney.
Yes.
She's I mean she's really almost a scene stealer in this entire film. And again, I got to give it to Heath. I mean, it's just something
Mhm.
just incredibly memorable about this role, and just again in such a short career, but just all of the roles that he played. I mean, there were so many. Like, I mean, they're all standouts in many
Yeah.
ways, and that's just a again just a testament to what a phenomenal actor he was. But
You know, I had made a joke a long time ago, a friend of mine, where I said something about, I think this must have been right after, um, or close to the Dark Knight, I guess,
mhm.
or Dark Knight Rises, I should say, because I remember like telling somebody, I feel like Christopher Nolan watched 10 Things I Hate About You and was like, I'm going to cast some of these people. Some of these people are great, because a lot of them have gone on to do Nolan movies.
I know David Cross.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember, and I said that to somebody I just met. I was with a friend, and this was her roommate, and she's like, wait a minute, did you just say Christopher Nolan directed 10 Things I Hate About You? And I was like, no, I said I think he watched it, and she was like, oh, and we all started laughing, and I was like cracking up thinking about it, going like, and like, what would that movie look like? Christopher Nolan's 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah. I mean that's a hypothetical right there. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
sidebar, he is a fan of La La Land, so he does he might have it in him. Maybe that's the next movie.
It's I wouldn't, it wouldn't bet against him,
No, I never bet against Nolan. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I always thought that
That's funny.
I always think of that, and one time when I was watching the movie and I was not sober, I posted a picture of Heath Ledger and I said, did you know, trying to make it all sound official, that Christopher Nolan cast Heath Ledger as the Joker because of the scene at Bowie Lowenstein's party in 10 Things I Hate About You? And I don't think anybody believed me. I think anyone who saw that tweet saw right through me and was just like, all right, well, he's on one of his kicks again. But, but I thought it was very funny. And then because I read it the next day after I took some Advil and such, and I was like, oh, that's pretty funny, actually.
Oh yeah, there we go. Drunk tweeting. Yeah, gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's very clear if you read some of my tweets, like when the stuff kicks in.
Right.
But that's a discussion for another day.
No, we'll save that for the Patreon episodes.
There we go.
No, absolutely, folks. You can get in on that action. No, I'm just kidding. Well, JJ, this has been an absolute delight, and I really do want to thank you for reminding me that this movie turned 25 years old, because I sound like a broken record again, but it's a classic. It's
Yep.
I mean, to quote Spike from Notting Hill, another movie with a 25-year plate in its corner, absolute classic, as he says
Yep.
in the film, and that is that's how I feel about this movie.
Yep.
It's timeless. So thank you for coming back on the pod and talking about it. But where can folks find you and stalk you ever so kindly on social media?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at 4 Comic Junkies. That's FOR Comic Junkies. You can also follow at Spider-Man Books, which is for the podcast, the Spider-Man Book Club that I host, and possibly get Phil on pretty soon for excuse me, a Spider movie themed extravaganza coming up.
Let me know.
And yeah, I think that's it. Instagram 4 Comic Junkies. But yeah, mostly on Twitter, just because I love to, throw out those wacky thoughts every now and then, because Maybe one day I'll end up on a BuzzFeed article that says funniest tweets about blah blah blah. You know.
Follow JJ for drunk tweets. There we go.
There
That
you go.
should be the slogan.
Yes.
No,
There
no.
you
There we go. I guess in all seriousness, all the information, guys, will be in the show notes, and I would encourage you to give this man a follow and to have a listen to his shows, because they do good stuff over there, and especially if you are a fan of Spider-Man and sort of the Spider-Man comics. They're not just sort of surface level discussions. You guys really get into the details of everybody's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So
that emotional reality, man.
that's right. That's right. And certainly, everybody, you can find me. I'll leave all the information as usual in the show notes. But JJ, again, want to thank you for coming back onto the show, and I'm sure I'll have you back sometime real soon, and we'll have another discussion about another timeless classic movie, or sort of, or just maybe an open-ended discussion about movies in general.
I'm always down for movies. It's my best friend and I, we play the game Name That Movie. We just did it yesterday, actually, throwing out some quotes, and we try to make them as obscure as possible.
Nice.
We've never kept score. But if I had to keep score, I'm certain he'd be winning.
Oh, okay, all right. So we're gonna have aficionado.
Not by much. Not by much.
All right.
But if there's like 10 right answers, I'm pretty sure I'm at 9. So,
okay, all right. Real coin toss here. All right, I like that.
You might say it differently, but
that's right. Truth is subjective, apparently.
Exactly.
No, definitely. We'll have to maybe do something with that down the line. But in any event, thank you as always for being on the show, and thank you to the folks at home for watching or listening to this show. That does it for me today. I'll be back next week, and we will certainly do this all over again for the love of movies.